Well, good afternoon. Welcome to part 2 of our Hispanic Heritage discussion series. My name is Yolanda Zepeda, and I am Assistant Vice Provost for Diversity and Inclusion at The Ohio State University. Before we get started, a little housekeeping. For the audience members, we have opened the Q&A function, and you will be allowed to, you can register your questions there. We've reserved some time at the end to focus on the questions, but we'll collect the questions throughout. I also remind you, as I said a moment ago, we are being recorded, and this recording will be posted on the ODI website following the webinar. On behalf of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, I am delighted to bring you 3 very accomplished leaders in higher education. They will be sharing their insights about what it takes to support Latinx college success. Before we get started, I would like to ask for a moment of your time to share a PSA regarding the Office of Diversity and Inclusion anniversary. As the university celebrates its sesquicentennial, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion has a special anniversary of our own to recognize, our 50th birthday. From our tumultuous beginnings in 1970 until today, our office has proudly stood as a fierce advocate for historically underrepresented students, faculty, and staff. The world has changed over the past half century, but we have never wavered from our bedrock belief that greater inclusion has merit and diversity brings us strength. It is important to us to honor the giants of diversity whose shoulders we stand on today. That's why in early 2021, we will induct the first 50 icons of inclusion into our inaugural Office of Diversity Hall of Fame. As we turn 50, we vow that our best days are still ahead of us. We have ambitious plans to expand our capacities by tirelessly building onto the foundation of our first half century, removing barriers every day. We all benefit when diversity and inclusion is woven through our daily work, and we must all succeed. And to succeed, we must all pull together. We look forward to your commitment as we push onward to the next horizon. Thank you for your attention, and we do hope that you will submit nominations to the Hall of Fame. I would like to now turn our attention to the topic at hand. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator this afternoon, Dr. Anne-Marie Nunez. Anne-Marie Nunez is professor in the Ohio State Department of Educational Studies, Higher Education and Student Affairs program. Her work addresses transforming post-secondary opportunity structures for historically marginalized communities. She examines how post-secondary institutions respond to significant demographic transformation, like the recent 4-fold growth in the Latinx share of the US population. Her work is anchored in 3 key areas of research: post-secondary trajectories of Latinx first-generation migrant and English learner students, institutional diversity in the US, including the role of Hispanic serving institutions, or HSIs, in promoting college opportunities, and third, building inclusive and equitable environments in STEM disciplines and HSIs. Dr. Nunez has received over $10 million in grants from funding agencies, including the National Science Foundation and the Spencer Foundation. Her current research aims to strengthen equity in geosciences and computing, and to build capacity for talent development in STEM fields at HSIs. It is our great pleasure that Anne-Marie is here on our faculty, and I'm just thrilled that she will be moderating our session this afternoon. Dr. Nunez.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, for that nice introduction. We have 2 great panelists today, and I'm going to make some introductory remarks to set the stage before we open it up. Just as a foundation, Latinx are now the largest population of color in the United States. They're almost 20% of the population, and 27% of all K through 12 students in public schools across the nation. So a very young population. They're also the largest population of color in this nation's post-secondary institutions. Yet they continue to have among the lowest bachelor's degree attainment rates among the larger racial ethnic groups in the US. So according to recent census data, 19% of Latinx in the US have bachelor's degrees, compared with 26% of Blacks, 40% of whites, and 58% of Asians in this country. They also earn fewer degrees on the whole in science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM fields, than other students. So this whole landscape raises the question, what does it mean to serve Latinx students in higher education, and how can higher education do a better job of this? Before I introduce our panelists, I do want to discuss the key role of Hispanic serving institutions. For those of you who may not be familiar with them, they are federally designated institutions that enroll at least 25% Latinx full-time undergraduate students. They enroll currently 67% of all Latinx in post-secondary education, according to recent data from Excellencia in Education, which is Deborah Santiago's agency and the source for many people who look for statistics on Latinx and HSIs. It's not an exaggeration to say that our panelists pioneered efforts to raise Latinx attainment and build capacity in HSIs to expand opportunity structures for this population. They really did and have and continue to pave the way for those of us involved in this work. They've been involved in it for a really long time and bring a really interesting longitudinal perspective, as well as understanding currently the changes that are going on. So I'm going to introduce our panelists first, and then I'm going to ask some questions to facilitate a conversation. And then we're going to open it up for questions and answers. We have a chat function where you all can type in your questions, and we'll be fielding and curating questions. So please feel free to use that function to enter your questions. I'm going to start by introducing Ann Gates. Dr. Ann Quiroz Gates is the Vice Provost at the University of Texas El Paso. She holds the AT&T Distinguished Professorship and served as chair of the Computer Science Department there twice, in 2005 to 2008 and 2012 to 2020. And in between those, she served as the Associate Vice President of Research and Sponsored Projects at the University of Texas at San Antonio. Gates is also the Executive Director of the Computing Alliance for Hispanic Serving Institutions. The acronym is CASI. This is one of NSF's 8 national includes alliances that promote the importance of inclusion and equity in advancing innovation and discovery, particularly in STEM fields. She also directs the NSF-funded CyberShare Center of Excellence that advances interdisciplinary education and research. She was a founding member of the NSF Advisory Committee for Cyber Infrastructure and also served on the Board of Governors of the IEEE Computer Society from 2004 to 2009. She's also served as a member of the Naval Research Advisory Committee, the American Advancement for Sciences Committee on Opportunities in Science, and a member of the Computer Science Accreditation Board. She's received several awards. I'm just going to highlight a few for those of you who may be particularly engaged in computing and engineering. She's received the Great Minds in STEM Education Award in 2015, the 2010 Anita Borg Institute Social Impact Award, and the 2009 Richard Tapia Achievement Award for Scientific Scholarship, Civic Science, and Diversifying Computing. She was named to Hispanic Business Magazine's 100 Influential Hispanics in 2006 for her work on the Affinity Research Group model, which is an innovative approach to design undergraduate and graduate collaborative experiences in research. And Deborah Santiago is the co-founder and the chief executive officer of Excellencia in Education. For more than 20 years, she has promoted strategies from the community to national levels to improve educational opportunities and success for all students. She co-founded Excellencia in Education to inform policy and practice, compel action, and collaborate with those ready to accelerate student success, employing a Latino lens. Deborah has worked in federal government, addressing legislative issues in higher education at the Congressional Research Service, and she's also informed program and budget efforts in the Office of Post-Secondary Education at the U.S. Department of Education. As the Deputy Director of the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanic Americans, which is now called the White House Hispanic Prosperity Initiative, Deborah advised and consulted with federal agencies and communities across the nation to improve awareness and educational opportunities for Latinx populations. Among her community efforts, she has provided program design and implementation for dropout prevention and parental engagement for the Aspira Association. And she has also been involved in translating data in many ways, but also translated data for community engagement as the Vice President for Research and Data at the Los Angeles Alliance for Student Achievement. Her work has been cited in numerous publications, including The Economist, The New York Times, The Washington Post, The Chronicle of Higher Education, Inside Higher Education, and Diverse Issues in Higher Education. So thank you, Anne and Deborah, for joining us today. I am going to begin with a pretty open question. What is the importance of serving Latinx students, faculty, and staff, and promoting Latinx scholarship in the broader higher education enterprise? Anne, if you want to go first, or if you want to choose who goes first, that's fine.
I'm fine to start, and I just like to reiterate what you said, Anne Marie, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity. You talked about the population, Hispanic population being 19%. Currently, but we're going to see that double over the next, in 2060, it will be double that number. When we look at computer science, which is my background, you'll see that only 10% of the CS degrees are awarded to Hispanics. And of those, only 2% are women. When you go into graduate programs, a master's program, 3% are Hispanic. Same is true for the PhD, and only 1% are female. So when I think about the importance of serving the Latinx community, and it's really around increasing their representation in the workforce, and even in particular being involved in research and creative activity. So we know that inclusion and diversity are critical if we're going to be advancing innovation and discovery. People see problems and solutions from different perspectives, in part because of the heuristics that define how we search for solutions. We encode our perspectives and then apply those to explore new and better solutions. So bringing in people with different backgrounds then starts to extend the solution base. So we know that there's substantial research that talks about how diversity increases profitability. I mentioned creativity. It provides an economic opportunity. So it leads to better job creation, better products. And so by not looking at diversity, we're really not taking advantage of our available talent. And as Anne Marie, who worked on the National Academy's report, it talks about the underutilization of talent in the US. When we look at the importance of scholarship, I really want to talk about the importance of understanding the interplay of culture, environment, financial stress, language, family obligations, first generational implications, all of these that have an impact on persistence. We really are shooting to start seeing parity in the numbers that go into STEM fields, in particular computer science from my perspective. So to change those numbers, we really have to understand barriers. We have to understand effective practices, the role of identity and belonging, and all of these other factors that you are studying and some of the other scholars are studying in this space.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, because I think that was a great response. I guess to complement that even more basically, I think every person in this country should have an equitable opportunity to reach their full potential. And the importance of what Anne shared, but also as we think about why we do what we do and who we are as a country, is making sure that everyone, especially this young, fast-growing population, gets served, and that we have the opportunity to reframe how we think about higher ed, how we think about society with this young, fast-growing population, and go from kind of structurally inequitable environments and context into one that allows us to look at that post-traditional role. What can we be going forward? Not just what have we been in the past. And I think that's important for us to consider as a country, society, as families and people that are looking to advance and move forward. So I just think that adds a little context to the why this matters and why we have to be paying attention to this population while we're serving all.
So just the importance of the Latinx population for this country and reimagining really what talent looks like, and academic contributions as well. So you both have a lot of different and varied experiences working to lift Latinx populations and educational attainment. What observations and experiences have inspired your academic and professional trajectories?
Deborah, do you want to start?
Sure, thanks, Anne. I am Latina, and I will say I had the good fortune of being a military brat and got the opportunity to move around quite a bit. And for me, when I hear issues talking about education, opportunity, I always thought about what does that mean for the people that I know and the people that I look like. And often the discussions, if there were any, were often very deficit based and it didn't resonate with me as somebody who I believe I'm a person of privilege. I have an education, I have a supportive family. And I got to the point where it's like, I cannot accept this deficit perspective of a community that I work so closely with, that I'm a part of. And that started a journey for me of how do we need to think about this subgroup while we're looking at how we need to address issues overall. My background's in economics, and so of course I start with data and numbers, but I thought we have to find ways to inform, do what I call ignorance abatement. Ignorance is not knowing. Stupidity you can't do a lot about, but you can educate, inform about this population amongst all. So that's been part of my journey. When I was at the U.S. Department of Education, I found that that ignorance was pervasive as well, even in a federal agency. And the opportunity to say, whether it's financial aid or it's institutional capacity or transfer, what are we doing here? And if you use the Latino lens, what does that mean? Does it allow us to rethink what we're doing, to reinforce what's working well? Are we seeing differences that we can invest in to make sure that all of our populations are being served? That's what's guided a lot of my thinking. And then I guess the last thing I'd say is that I found often, and still to this day, I can be in a room of talking about public policy and be the only person of color in the room. And I think that leads to traditional perspectives of traditional students, institutions, and pathways. And that really represents less than 20% of students today at most. And so we need to make sure that we have agency and voice in a space where we might not be as well represented. I work in Washington, D.C. I don't know that I need to say any more than that. But so I feel a certain responsibility to make sure that we are talking about this population when it's about policy, it's about funding, it's about opportunity, to make sure that we are seeing the best of what's possible and the opportunities and not just the crisis.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm like Deborah. I'm a daughter of a military brat, so my dad was in the Navy. But really, I was influenced by my parents. My mother only had an 8th grade education. My dad only had 2 years of college. But they set for the goal for their 5 children that they would all get their degrees. The females in the family, there are 3 of us, could not get married until we had our bachelor's degree. So it was really this impact of their words that really has driven a lot of what I do. And the fact that they had this belief that their children must have an education, how important that was. The other thing that really influenced me is when I was a young faculty member and I went through the cooperative learning training that was provided. It was week-long training. I did 3 years. It really influenced a lot of my work and how you build cooperative teams, how you bring people around the table, around these 5 elements. That include building positive interdependence and promotive interaction, accountability, and so forth. But when I went through that, it influenced the way I started to look at how to build capacity. And so very early on, my first year as a faculty member, I worked with others and developed the Affinity Research Group model and started to think, how can we make a difference? And it was really around, building confidence, right? Not just bringing in the best and the brightest, but developing those students that had the capability, but maybe didn't have the confidence. They're first generation, maybe they don't understand how to navigate. So that really influenced me. Dr. Natalicio always said, talent is everywhere. And all we need to do is provide those opportunities. So that really has been something that has driven me. But going back a little bit before that, I happened to attend a meeting by someone from NSF. I was at UTEP. I was getting my master's degree at the age of 38. When this program officer started talking about the low numbers that I just shared with you. So talking about the low numbers in STEM, and then how many of those were Hispanic, and then how many were female. So she started to get down into the 2%. And I kind of thought, well, why? And then I thought, wait a minute, I didn't do it. And why didn't I do it? I always wanted to go to graduate school, never did. But anyway, it was that with the cooperative learning and starting to develop these models that then drove me to really to create with a group of people. I've always worked as a team, the Computing Alliance of Hispanic Serving Institutions. So in 2004, we started looking at what that model would look like. In 2006, the NSF Broadening Participation in Computing program opened. We applied, we received funding. We've been funded for 15 years. 2 years ago then, the National Science Foundation elevated the importance of inclusion with respect to discovery and innovation. And so we were lucky to be one of 6 that were funded that year. We're the only one that was being the backbone resides at institution at UTEP. We're the only one that is serving Hispanics exclusively, and we're the only ones that are focused on computing. But it was this whole generation of talks, inspiration, a lot of what Deborah said I resonate with, absolutely. That's why I'm doing what I do.
Great, and for those of you, I think Ann Gates referred to Dr. Natalicio. Just for those of you who might not be aware, and I might have forgotten to mention this, the University of Texas El Paso is one of the largest Hispanic serving institutions in the country, and it's also become a very research active institution. And so, some of Ann's direct experience applying for grants, but also just making it easier for others to apply for grants has really helped that institution build its capacity in research and scholarship and creative work. And Diana Natalicio is also known as a national leader who really has promoted serving Latinx students in education. And I believe she's also a senior scholar at Excelencia right now.
Yes.
So she is, going to continue to contribute to an understanding of leadership and really top-level leadership and the role of top-level leadership. One of the things that she would say is that as a leader is that talent doesn't reside in one zip code. That there should be opportunities for all to be able to pursue a higher education. So, just wanted to clarify for those of you who might not have been familiar with her work. How can and should higher education institutions know that they are adequately serving Latinx students? And we might even say, you know, enabling Latinx students to thrive, however you want to kind of frame that, however you want to define success, because maybe that's part of the, you know, potential diversity in responses. But what types of measures of inclusion and success should institutions be attending to in knowing that they've met success with this population?
Yeah, so this is really Deborah's expertise. So if she'll let me give my perspective first. So we could look at traditional measures, right? I think that every department, every university should be looking at recruitment and retention data, right? And looking at it in the early years, disaggregate it by race, ethnicity, and gender. When you're looking at whether you're adequately serving Latinx with a department chair's hat, I think it's really important that you hear from the students, right? So there are focus groups, opportunities, listening groups, opportunities to really sit down and understand the issues that students are facing. So it's building that relationship if you're a department chair or if you're a faculty member. We started holding weekly meetings with the teaching assistants and undergraduate instructional assistants and peer leaders. We started to put them into small groups to really talk about how our students were doing. And we gave them agency to really take ownership on the success of our students. You know, are you seeing students struggling? If you are, then you need to let us know. You need to reach out to the student, you know, let them know what resources that they have. We also wanted to make sure that, that they understood the implicit bias, stereotype threat. You know, we talked about the low number of females in computer science. This was really a big issue. Wanted to make sure that our students who are very close to the students that they are overseeing. We also did something I thought is really important, and we created something called Competing Concerns. It was a friend of mine who was Dr. Connie De La Piana, who was an evaluator and was at NSF for a long time. She came up with this idea of competing concerns. You know, when we start talking to our instructional assistants and TAs, we separated faculty and the students, and then we asked faculty, you know, what concerns do you have about the TAs? And then ask the TAs, what concerns do you have about being a TA? And so it was really interesting because there was like an overlap of what one said and what the other said. And it was around communication. It was around, you know, getting the assignments on time. And then the faculty would talk about then returning the assignments on time. So, but it provides an opportunity for conversation, which I think is really, really important. The other thing I want to talk about that we did in our department is that we created a climate study. We really wanted to understand inclusion, sense of belonging, and identity of our faculty, of our students rather, with respect to faculty. So we did have a fairly large funding from NSF through their RED program, reimagining education and inclusion, diversity, and you know, how are we really working with industry and being current. So we could talk about, you know, their classroom experience, self-efficacy, their perception of support that they receive, growth mindset, satisfaction. So there's a number of research questions that we have around that, but having done that and having, I guess we're in our third year now of having run a climate study, what we did is we actually put faculty into small groups around some of the questions and then had them really speak deeply. And that's where I saw the biggest change in culture, because faculty were shocked. I just very vividly remember one group of faculty that were shocked that students felt like their responses weren't valued in the classroom. And so just seeing that in black and white and the number of students, I mean, one faculty member who was kind of resistant to the value of this said, my gosh, if it's even one student that feels that I don't value their input, that's one too many. So those are the things that we looked at from a departmental chair's perspective.
Thank you. Deborah?
Yeah, so thank you. Again, building on some of what Anne shared, I have a national perspective. I work in public policy, and this construct, Hispanic serving institutions, a political construct that was created, recognized at the federal level in the 1990s. And to your question about adequately serving, I guess, for me, I cringe a little bit at what's adequate in serving any student. I think at an institution, you have a social contract with students once you've enrolled them to help them meet their goals. And while students have a responsibility, what's the institutional responsibility to help that student meet that goal and objective? So for me, deconstructing what it means to serve is really important, because in the 25 years that I've been looking at HSI, since I was a much younger policy person at the Department of Education, and when we didn't know what that meant, we've been trying to find ways to give meaning to serving. And so to your question about what should we be looking for, how do we measure and understand it, I'd offer one potential framework, because in listening and learning the institutions for 20 odd years about that, I know it's not just about enrollment. Enrollment is a necessary precursor. It's not sufficient to say we're serving. So what does that look like? Well, each institution is a little bit different, but I'm just going to suggest to you one framework for considering from an organization that's independent. We're not membership based, we're not direct service providers, but we're trying to push a way of understanding with a Latino lens. And that is to say, if we're serving, here's a basic understanding. Are you enrolling? Are you retaining? Are you supporting financially? Are you transferring? Are you modeling with faculty and staff? And are you graduating these students? That's not rocket science, but that is a way of looking at a pathway where an institution has some measure of control and can measure some of what they do with data. And data are the language of decision makers. So understanding that, while that's not the only factor, is really important. So we know with publicly available data, we can look at a profile of institutions and whether or not they're serving, giving those 6 areas of criteria. For us, it goes a step beyond that. Anne-Marie, if you'll just indulge just a little bit more, because this is about measures and understanding, right? So data are a critical part, they're not sufficient. For us, we look at 5 years of data, because it's not about comparing one institution to another. It's about an institution to itself. Where did you start and where are you? Do we see momentum? Do we see effort or not? Because the key part of serving is intentionality. Are you intentional in serving this population, or is it by default? Are you enrolling them because of demography and geography, or intentionality and impact? And our interest is in the latter, not so much the former. So data are key, practice is another. That's where you really see intentionality. We see institutions that can do well and have good numbers, not because they've done anything, but because the students are resilient in making it happen. So for institutional effort, if you're serving as an institution, what are your practices in each of those categories? And are you including Latinos in those efforts as a way of understanding your intentional efforts and supporting them? And then third is this issue of leadership. And it seems as many people you have in a room, that's how many definitions of leadership there are. But from our perspective, it takes people to transform, but we're really talking about institutional leadership. What's in your strategic plan? What's in your HR strategy and recruitment of faculty and your institutional culture? What are you doing in communications and in the community, your service area? We're trying to understand that as a way of serving students. And for us, that's part of the social contract and also the opportunity we have to look across institutions at the national level with a framing.
So Deborah, one of the things that you've been talking about is in terms of understanding serving, how to balance more standardized measures with contextualized measures, right? That leadership may look different at different institutions. What Anne might have been describing going on in her department to cultivate serving might look different in a different kind of department. So that sort of brings me to the next question. At a predominantly white institution like Ohio State, I know that both of you work with predominantly white institutions as well, right? Extensively. What would a climate of inclusion and equity look like for Latinx populations? And maybe it's similar to what you just described, but in a place where there's perhaps a lower presence. We were talking before we all gathered here about how at Ohio State right now, there's about a 4% share of Latinx students of the whole population. I think at both the undergraduate, the graduate level, and the faculty level. So it's interesting, it's 4% at those different levels. At an institution like this, how can faculty, administrators, students, staff work together to cultivate a climate of support for Latinx students? And what would be effective strategies to support Latinx students in research and career preparation activities?
Deborah?
Sure, I'll start and then hands it off to Anne. So I think the importance is paying attention to making sure while we're serving Latino students, it's not the exclusion of others, right? This is a matter of intentionality for groups that have historically been underrepresented and underserved. I think you have to be very intentional in outreach and engagement and finding ways to make sure you're culturally responsive to their needs and efforts. And that means that you have to sometimes take off the hat of that traditional student and profile and expectations and maybe put on somebody else's shoes, as the expression goes, right? To see what are the strengths and needs of this student population that might be young and growing. If you're really gonna create an environment that is accepting, inclusive, engaging for them to feel like they belong. And that sometimes can make you very uncomfortable. But the reality is, I think if we're gonna have the kinds of change we need to serve our post-traditional students, of which Latinos are representative, I think being a little bit uncomfortable and questioning the traditional ways of doing things and making sure it still resonates with the populations that are there that we're trying to serve are important. And I'd say the first part of that is you gotta know who you're serving, who you're not serving, and who you really intend to serve. Because that will tell you a lot about how effective you are. And we work with institutions, especially predominantly white institutions, that feel like they can do the same things they've always done and are surprised when students of color are not participating and basically conclude that students of color don't care because we offer all these resources and services and support without acknowledging that maybe the invitation, the assumption and expectation that you have, that they know it's available, that they are able to partake given their schedule and responsibilities, that they feel like they are an equal an accepted participant in those efforts and strategies is not there. I think that awareness creation, I mean, you've got an Office of Diversity and Inclusion, you've got a faculty like Anne-Marie and others that care and are paying attention, can help guide. I think you rely on those who know to help inform and make sure that you are investing in that commitment, because we measure what we value and we invest in what we value. And then we're always looking for what institutions are doing to create the space that shows that and not just the rhetoric. And then puts the onus on students to transform and change, but that the institution is more than meeting students halfway. I think all of those are necessary. Anne?
Really excellent points, Deborah. Students, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, intersectionality, they must feel that the university is invested in their success. And that message has to come from the top. And so and it comes from the top, but it comes all the way down, right? All the way down to faculty. But it's really your leader that sets that tone. That's one thing that Dr. Natalicio was really, on target. I mean, it was very clear that she was about access and excellence. I wanted to kind of talk about an initiative that UTEP did that I think is very pertinent, and that's an initiative called The Edge that is centered on student success and providing our students with a competitive edge toward high impact practices. And the goal was set to have every student be exposed to at least 2 of these practices because the research shows that it was leading to higher retention rates, shorter time to degree, and it was important for our first generation students. The type of impact practices that were identified is study away, undergraduate research and creative activities, community engagement. Deborah mentioned that in the previous question. Capstone, creative activities and learning communities, internships, student leadership, and then the first year experiences. You know, what is the experience that the student is exposed to coming into a university? Sometimes, you know, no one else in the family has had that experience. So how do we create a culture? How do we promote asset-based thinking, which is so important? And then how do we honor everyone's experiences, their talents, their language skills, and bilingualism, and the work experience that they come with? And so that is a whole culture that was created. Again, I think having student affinity groups of some sort, whether it's student orgs. We have a CASI student group that supports our students through the support that we provide through CASI. And you have to look at how the faculty that you hire. So if you want to really put a lens on broadening participation at a primarily white institution, then who are the faculty that you're hiring? And do they look like the populations that you would like to attract? Because, and it could be around, you know, a variety of things, but, you know, having faculty who have had similar experiences that the students are facing is so important. And so I talked a little bit about, you know, the importance of having TAs that also reflect the students within the university and the students that you're wanting to retain. But we also, through CASI, have a number of effective practices: peer-led team learning, the affinity research group model that I spoke about briefly, problem solving, FellowNet. And what I say is that while the focus is on Hispanics and their success at the university, everyone benefits from these types of efforts. And I think that that's really important, that it's not, this is for them and this is for us, but rather this is something that elevates all of our students and helps them become successful.
So that kind of connects with Deborah's point about, you know, to look at these efforts as both and, as serving multiple groups of students, that all students benefit from strategies like affinity research groups, collaborative learning, experiential learning, those kinds of opportunities. I think that your discussion, Anne, of EDGE and this idea of engaging students, making sure that students are engaged in high impact practices, brings me to my next question. Since it has been developed at your institution, it's an institution-wide effort, it's not just located in a department. Hispanic serving institutions, which are these federally designated institutions that enroll 25% or more Hispanic students, what are the kinds of lessons that institutions like Ohio State can learn from HSIs like UT El Paso, from what UT El Paso is doing? And I'm asking that question in part because I was involved in a National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine report about the role of minority serving institutions in developing science talent in the United States. And one of the things I've known from two decades as a higher education scholar and working on that report is that when people are talking about student support strategies, typically those strategies at predominantly white institutions tend to be centered in scholarship. A lot of the scholarship just focuses on those more selective institutions. And I know both of you have already been touching on that. So just taking a little further, what might predominantly white institutions learn when we flip it and think about center Hispanic serving institutions and what they can learn?
Yeah, it's really a good question. And I think that I'm going to go back to at the beginning when you talked about what does it mean to be an Hispanic serving institution? And there is this, 25%. So you see institutions like UC Berkeley that have already put a stake in the ground of becoming an HSI and providing services that center on student success, academic success. There are over 300 emerging HSIs And so we really want to distinguish between those that are enrolling versus serving, right? And this is what you have talked about in the book and that you authored, co-authored. And so we really need to think about if it's serving, then you have practices, you have norms, you have a culture in place, right? There's leadership from the top. And so it's important, again, what the upper administration views on diversity, equity, inclusion. And then I go back to accountability, because it's not enough to say that you have an opportunity and say, we want to make sure that all of our students can benefit from this, but rather, challenging that, saying, I want to see a plan. How are you going to make sure that those students that could benefit from this are benefiting? And then looking at the data, did you actually meet that target? So, if you have a center on diversity, and maybe the numbers aren't changing, well, that's going to be the president, chancellor needs to take ownership on that. And I think Deborah kind of touched a little bit on that, when we hear a lot, we have offered this opportunity, the students aren't coming. Well, that's not good enough. We have to sit back and we have to understand why. You mentioned that UTEP is, we have over 82% of our students are Hispanic. We have always been about the success of our students, but then we were able just last year to be designated an R1, very high research activity. And we did this, saying that we value the integration of research and education. So they're really not separated. And so I think if there's anything that someone could learn, it's really that, it's not an either or. It's not about, we either serve underrepresented, minoritized students, or, we are a research institution. UTEP has done this by valuing undergraduate research. They've done this through, a lot of the EDGE activities are really, developing the students' confidence, their ability to have these experiences where they're networking. And one of the things that really, networking and learning from others. So one of the things that one of the National Academy groups that I'm on, I heard a talk from someone talking about mentoring and talking about how she kind of categorized them. And it was like, one example was, I'm a mentor. I have my students who are from underrepresented groups, and I take them to a conference. And how great is that, right? I'm giving them these opportunities versus someone that says, okay, I have my students, I'm taking them and I'm introducing them to the scholars that they need to know. I am promoting their work. There's a big difference between, showcasing students and actually working with your students invested in their success. And so those are the things I think that lessons to be learned that UTEP really does well. We really invest in our students. We really work to develop their skills at all levels, whether it's creative activities, whether it's research, and giving them those opportunities to really shine and empower them. So one thing about the Affinity Research Group model is that what we say, and the reason I really vested in it, is that it's the deliberate development of skills. Don't assume that students come with the skills that they need to be successful. And when we did this, the realization was that if we just go out and announce we have undergraduate research opportunities and we pick the best and the brightest, then we'll never change the numbers. We have to look at the students that have the capability but maybe lack the confidence. And where this really resonated for me was when I was asked, a colleague and I were asked to give a workshop in Virginia, and it was primarily a mining town. The university was a smaller university. And when we went to give this Affinity Research Group model workshop, we looked out and it was all white male. I mean, I think there might have been 2 females in the audience. It was all white male. And when I asked them to come in, I said, okay, write down your name, give me, we asked them always to say, what's your favorite food? What is your hobby? Just to get them to start mixing. They wouldn't even pick up, the card to write their name. Then I said, okay, they're all in the back. I said, come forward. And then finally I got them to write it down. And I turned to my colleague and I said, wow, this is going to be a long day. So because we started talking about underrepresentation and so forth, and the value of the model. So at lunch, I said, you know what, why don't we have a longer lunch? We're going to be in a picnic. The college was offering a picnic for all the students. And I said, let's just make it a little bit longer. And I was shocked when a student came up to me and said, oh, please don't. I'm learning so much and I want to be here. And so I was surprised. And then when we started to do competing concerns, so much came out from the students talking about, we never even knew about research. This is, I wish I had these opportunities. And then the faculty started hearing from the students. And so that's when I realized that the ARG model, while we were really focused on Hispanics, really went beyond that. And it's really about expanding participation at all levels, from all people that go into research, because that is so important, as Deborah said, for the health of our nation.
Yeah. I'll just add to that, Anne, so thanks for that with detail. Just, again, bring it up a little bit more as we think about this at the national level. When you talk, Anne-Marie, when you ask about lessons learned, and UTEP is a very good example. I will tell you that part of what our assessment of that is like, start with Latinos, start with your Latinx population, and focus on strengths, not just needs. So for example, institutions that assume that our population comes in with no skills or abilities because it's not traditional, could be leaving at the table opportunities to address the social network the students bring with. That is a source of strength, not one that you have to strip them of and force them to be traditional in effort. So focus on strengths, not just needs. And then find what works and leverage it. And this is your example of lessons learned. There are a lot of institutions that are doing work. At Excelencia, 15 years of trying to track examples of Excelencia, what's working so we can share that with others. So there's no excuse for inaction. If you really want to serve Latino students, there are programs and practices around the country that are doing it. And while no program can you necessarily just lift in toto and put somewhere else and expect it's going to work, there are common threads and approaches that you can figure out what's authentic for your institution. And we have a Growing Works database where we try, it's public, it's free, it's available. We want to make sure that people are engaging and don't say, I don't know how. Well, talk to peers who are. Specific to predominantly white institutions. Well, I had mentioned earlier how you measure whether you might be more intentional in serving. We at Excelencia created something called the Seal of Excelencia. Again, we're a small organization, but we saw there was a need in the field and it wasn't being addressed. And so we said, let's come up with an approach that can raise the standards and expectations for what it means to serve. And I will say, we just announced our second cohort last week. We had 9 institutions last year. We had 5 this year. We've had over 50 apply. It's high standards, high stakes, not high standards like metrics, but overall what we're looking for. UTEP is one of them. They were in that first cohort. Anne didn't mention that, but I'm going to call it out for lots of work they're doing. But in addition, and this matters to Ohio State, so we had Grand Valley State University in Michigan, 8% Hispanic that earned the Seal of Excelencia, because it's not just, do you have a critical mass enrolled, 25% or whatever that is, but can you show intentionality in your data, practice, and leadership? You guys can learn from that. Ohio State can learn from that. We have University of Illinois, Chicago, University of Texas at Austin, Florida International University, University of Arizona, Arizona State. These are institutions that are large as well, that have shown intentionality of effort with data, practice, and leadership to show what they're doing to serve. I would suggest, as the president of UT San Antonio did, University of Texas San Antonio did, go talk to these presidents, these peer institutions, to see what they're doing, because they're more likely to be the ones that could help Ohio State if there's interest, or other predominantly white institutions, in figuring out what can be done with faculty, with staff, with your students, with your leadership, with your investment of resources. There are those who have done it. They are the trendsetters, and they can pave the way for others. And I think that's the opportunity we have in looking at predominantly white institutions, because many of them will become HSI according to the enrollment threshold, and that doesn't have meaning from my perspective unless you can show intentionality of effort.
Yeah, so Yolanda, I'm thinking maybe there's some way on the ODI website or to put Excellencia's website on there, because there's certainly a lot of effective practices and programs listed, and also universities and colleges around the country that are engaged in this, and also community colleges as well as four-year institutions. I think that's really a range of, and I think that's what, you know, Deborah was trying to speak to, right? Ranging from, you know, more selective research institutions and flagships all the way to, you know, community colleges. That potential lies in multiple institution types as well. This question comes up for me because, and again, this came from the National Academy's report, that sometimes you know, universities that are predominantly white institutions, they're looking to recruit you know, students from Hispanic serving institutions, or to develop partnerships with minority serving institutions or Hispanic serving institutions. And one of the things that report found is sometimes the relationships are not completely reciprocal. And I think this is sort of extending the prior question: how can those institutions create more mutually beneficial partnerships?
If you want to start, Deborah, let me know.
I'm happy to follow your lead, and whatever works best for you. That's fine.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the reality is, I think that just like we have to value our students, I think we have to value the institutions that have a high concentration of them. We released a piece a couple of years ago, we've done it multiple times, called Finding Your Workforce,
Yes.
because we heard graduate schools and employers that claim to want to have Latinx population employed, and yet would claim they're not graduating, or we don't know where they are, because they kept recruiting at same 15, 16 institutions,
Right.
and that's not where we are. And so this goes back to a certain amount of ignorance about that. But then when you talk about partnership, if you're partnering with institutions that have a high concentration of students of color, owning and respecting and learning from that institution rather than assuming that you're doing them a favor by partnering with them is part of that mindset. And there's a lot you can learn in that partnership if you're willing to come at it in a collaborative way that we don't always see. The ones that have been successful have been genuine in their partnership and effort. And those that are looking for the enlightened self-interest to say, they've got students, I'm going to take them, it doesn't work. And very quickly it devolves into, they don't have the quality or the caliber that we need or expect, without checking themselves about the traditional expectations and efforts they have when you've got dynamic students who have a diverse set of experiences and engagement, and that can actually enrich the field. So I always start with, where are we valuing the partnerships we create, as opposed to assuming what you can take from it. What can you give back to an institution that's done the hard work and is effectively recruiting and serving these students? I think that is a power-based shift. I think the other is, you have to invest in it, in that partnership, to make it meaningful, because too often the presumption is that you give me the students and I have the money, and these are not institutions that come at the same power base financially or in academic prestige. And those, just to me, are two ways that you could do that. We have found students and faculty and others who leave institutions where they've been heavily recruited because they don't see themselves, but more, they don't see the support, and they don't see the commitment to the same cause of community and effort. And I think you have to have your eyes open to that if you genuinely want partnership.
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, I would say that I would like to see PWIs create relationships with the researchers at HSIs. So have the relationship with the researcher so that you are working together on research and bringing in the students, and that creates this transition that is much more it's synergistic. The student ends up with some familiarity with the topic. They already have a support group. It has to be genuine, like Deborah said. We're added on to a lot of efforts that are not genuine. And so once the money comes, then the real partnership no longer exists. What CASI found, we had an initiative, and we still do, called FemProf. It's focused on junior Latinas to prepare them to go into the professoriate. It was a very successful program. A number of the females received GRFPs, which are highly selective fellowships given by the NSF. But as to Deborah's point, they went off to some of these institutions and were really unhappy. They didn't have support groups. They didn't have, people that they could share food with, and a culture, and all of that were really issues that we really started to have to pay attention to. I know that Anne-Marie was involved with a workshop that was funded by the NSF to make recommendations on what needs to happen at NSF to build research capacity for Hispanic researchers and HSIs. And I just had a conversation this week with NSF, and they're listening to our recommendations. So we are funded this year to put together a workshop to identify, to put together proposals that will go to NSF that could have partnerships with PWIs. We're really putting a big focus on Hispanic researchers, even if they're not at HSIs, to make sure that they're given the support as emerging researchers to become successful. But this is about building partnerships, right? It's about building, identifying a problem, and I'm talking about size now. So you have to be working with a proposal that goes to size, which is computer information systems and engineering. And so we're looking now to put together these teams. If there's anyone out there that really feels that they'd like to recommend someone, or they want to be part of this workshop, we'll be holding it in November. So it's a commitment for a year, I must say, maybe less than a year, like, let's say 8 months. But the idea is that we're calling them mini ideas labs, so that we come together, brainstorm on ideas around research, find out who we compare together, and then provide continual feedback. We're looking for reviewers, we're looking for mentors to help put together competitive proposals. ASEE is going to hold a workshop in the spring that brings together not just HSIs, but tribal colleges and HBCUs who are working on the same effort. And then it's an opportunity now to pitch to NSF, get feedback, and then go back to put together a full proposal. So this is what's happening to build research capacity, and I think it's a great opportunity to build partnerships.
Great, thank you. Is it okay, Yolanda, if I ask one more question and then we'll transition to Q&A? This is kind of extending actually what Anne brought up about supporting faculty. We have been talking a lot about supporting students, which is absolutely critical. But how can institutions support Latinx faculty and staff, and how would they know that they would be successful in that? What are metrics that might indicate support for Latinx faculty, administrators, and staff?
Yeah, I think Deborah kind of hit on this already. So, because she's the expert, I'll go first. But I think it's, I think you have to, you have to recruit, right, faculty if you're really serious about this. And how do you recruit faculty, but then how do you support them? So a lot of times faculty come in, and if they're at a research institution, even if they're an emerging research institution, there's an expectation that you do, that you have research at some level, right? You're asked to be put on a lot of different committees, and because you're probably the only one that's there, right? Being a Latina, I get asked a lot to, I need a Latina, can you be that representation? And so I think you really have to look at the support structures. It's important, and when personnel leave, whether it's a staff member or whether it's a faculty member, really trying to understand why they're leaving, why, what is the turnover rate? Are there different retentions around different types of your faculty? Are faculty moving? Maybe they get tenure, maybe they don't. I mean, I've seen those cases. If you don't get tenure, let's say you get tenure, are you going to stay in associate professor level? I see that so much. And how are you mentoring them to move them into full professor? And so anyway, those are some of the basic things. I really care about time and rank. I care about looking at disaggregating the data, looking at female, looking at people from different groups, and then thinking more around those support structures. How do you create allies, and how do you create those people that advocate for you at the university and watch after you? I mean, well, I'm going to leave it there. Small experiences. Deborah.
So I'll just to add to that, I think we have to value faculty and what they bring, especially faculty of color, to an institution in ways that isn't always valued. And by that, Anne mentioned that, the representation on committees, but it's also the community work. It's also the additional mentoring when students of color want to go to faculty of color. That should be included not just in tenure status and tracking, but in salary efforts and the way we compensate and we value faculty in their performance reviews and on an annual basis. We too often don't do that. So those are clear, simple metrics. I think if you want to recruit, to Anne's point, is there an opportunity to make sure that especially newer faculty get access to resources to do research that doesn't require them out of the gate to be a grant expert as well as a research expert as well as the community representative and mentor? We can do that for faculty of color. We can measure all of those actions. Those are actions of intentionality or lack thereof. And I think that for those that say it's not either do it for all or don't, I'm not opposed to doing it for all. But I think part of the intentionality is making sure if you're committed to a goal of showing more representation and making sure that you're supporting and retaining them, you've got to be proactive and you've got to be intentional in assessing their needs, especially as you've got such stellar faculty like you've got Anne Marie and you've got Ann Gates. I mean, they're unfortunately a diamond in the rough with what can be. They are examples of the diamonds in the rough that exist everywhere that we're not cultivating. The other is looking at culturally responsive pedagogy. We've got to be investing in faculty. Don't presume that because a faculty member is Hispanic that they have all the nuance and know what's involved, because it's their personal experience unless they've studied it. But also the faculty who are not Hispanic, because the reality is that we need a more culturally responsive pedagogical approach to how we instruct and teach. And certainly during this pandemic and what we know about the structural inequities, that means we have to constantly be checking and pushing what we're doing. And the other is very simply, we're working on this, but for the Seal of Excellencia, we asked for 5 years of data looking at faculty by tenure status and overall, and we're looking at representation. So don't want to minimize that representation, not just for students, but our faculty. And we're looking at that by discipline. And that's an onerous challenge to do, but I will say it's really important, because you don't want to, it's critical to have Latinx faculty in languages and the social sciences and humanities. And that can represent the disproportionate amount of your Latinx faculty overall. But are you seeing, our students feeling they have faculty or find they have faculty in other disciplines? We did work with Latino students and found they would tell us, you know what, I've never had a Latino faculty member in my entire educational experience. And I hadn't even thought about it till you asked the question. That should be a goal. That's something that we can measure with students as well. So I think I gave you like 6 or 7 measures there.
Yeah, and I think also I'm going to add to that, you should study. Are all of your faculty at, are they on tenure track positions, or are they just being hired as lecturers, or, you start seeing really a disproportionate number that are not given the opportunity to be tenure track.
Great. Thank you all. There's so many ideas for understanding success and many dimensions of it. So I'm going to open it up to questions. Yolanda, I see some ideas.
So I know I sent a lot to you. So the last text that I sent to you,
Yes.
we can start there. The most recent one I just sent.
Do you mean the 6 areas?
Yes.
Okay.
And then there's a question right above.
Okay. There's a question particularly for Deborah. If you can restate the 6 areas in the seal of excellencia that indicate servingness, right?
Yeah, sure. So for us, it's, are you enrolling? Are you retaining? Are you transferring? Are you supporting financially? Are you modeling with faculty and staff? And are you graduating your Latinx students?
Great, thank you.
And we should also, I think we touched on it, but I think it's really important to talk about the importance of community colleges. When you mentioned transferring, this is where, and talking about building relationships, I think it's really important to be attuned to community colleges and the value that they bring, and the number of Hispanics that are at 2-year colleges.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
And that's key to the work that we do, which is why we don't just, I gave you examples of those that were more comparable to Ohio State, but many Latino students are at community colleges, and they're open access. There's so much to be learned about the efforts by these institutions to be intentional. It's incredibly laudable because they take students from whence they are and where they've come and their readiness, and they make sure that they get to the point they need to be. To me, that's exemplary of what it really means to serve.
You all bring up a great point, because over half of Latinx students, or right at about half, begin their post-secondary, who are enrolled in post-secondary education, begin it at community colleges. And there's other work that's longitudinal, that controlling for other factors, Latinos are way more likely than other racial ethnic groups to choose to attend a community college right out of high school. So that's really important background on this.
Yeah. I think that is it. And, what I find interesting, though, is the resilience of our students. Another thing that President Natalicio often talked about was the challenge of using traditional metrics like graduation rates are great for traditional students and pathways, first-time, full-time freshmen. When you look at community college students, we did some analysis on faculty pipeline. It showed, based on Danny Solorzano's work, that showed back in the day that of Chicano PhDs, how many started at community colleges, and we did recent analysis looking at NSF data. Still about 1/3 of Latinos who get their PhDs started at community college. That is not the pathway we often think about. And the resilience, the commitment, the academic robustness that's required to take that trajectory and still earn a doctorate degree is something that needs more research, but also needs to be commended. These students are incredibly resilient, and we don't think about that.
And having those faculty, and we have some at UTEP, and computer science, I'm not speaking for all of UTEP, but I think it is pervasive, is that they become the role models. They start sharing their experiences, and this is, I had these roadblocks in my life and I overcame them, and you can too. Those messages are so important around retention and recruitment and retention and persistence, right? So yeah, I think that we can't overlook the importance of that.
So thinking even a little bit earlier, our next question is, have you seen any positive movement or increased focus at universities to work on Latinx K-12 outreach and engagement or pre-college programming as part of their pipeline to access? I believe higher ed support for Latinx students needs to start even before they become college students.
At UTEP, it's a huge effort. I mean, in College of Engineering, we have a whole an office that's just devoted to that. And then all of the departments work at that level. We're even working with K through 12 teachers just to make sure that they are prepared to be able to offer computer science courses. I talked about, with my computer science hat, we're seeing low number of students that are even exposed in our area in El Paso del Norte region, because there are not even the courses being offered. So when we start looking at the low numbers, I mean, we have to start there, right? And so having the teachers and then working with the students and getting them excited. There is so much evidence around students talking about it was this experience with this middle school teacher or this high school teacher that really influenced me to go into college and to study whatever the discipline might be. And I also, the creative arts, the fine arts, I mean, those are also important as well. I mean, I'm just don't talk with a STEM hat. I just think that it's so important that we have representation in all disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that data tell us, Anne-Marie, that over 85% of students, of Latino students who enroll, go close to home, certainly within the same state.
Yes.
It's over 80% for all students, but disproportionately you see for Latinx population. And that means that if HSIs are created because of demography and geography, their feeder pipeline is the most explicit. And the institutions we work with, and I will say about the 530 some odd HSIs, if a fourth of them are very intentional in serving and can show that, I think that's high. They all have strategies and efforts to reach down and back, not just high school, but some in middle school, because they know that's the community angle of serving. It's not just the academic route, but the alignment of support services and awareness building and support have to start there. So we've got lots of examples of Excelencia where we see that very element in play, and every single one of the SEAL institutions has elements of that, from outreach and engagement to support of La Familia and the efforts that are involved.
And I want to thank you again for raising that point, because I think it's such an important one. And I think as an administrator now, I think it's really important that departments value that as service, right? That you're going out into the community and assisting in it. It just can't be done by one office. You have to have faculty involved. You have to have the students involved. At CASI, we recognize our students that work in the community. They become CASI scholars. If they're developing their disciplinary background, but also reaching out into the community, our students love it. The K through 12 students really connect with them in a much deeper level. So absolutely, that's so important.
So great examples. I have two related questions coming in. On the subject of supporting Latinx faculty and staff, what can we do to create more inclusive spaces when we are the only Latinx staff in a department? And then a follow-up to that is, how can we, meaning graduate students, doctoral students, postdoctoral scholars, entry-level staff, advocate for our Latinx students when we work and teach with overtly white upper level or predominantly white upper level administration?
Well, communities of practice are so critical. And one thing that I'm really pleased about with CASI is that we have started to create cross-institutional communities. So bringing together, we just at Great Minds in STEM brought together Latinas from across the nation in Puerto Rico to come together and start developing their plans. And so we worked with them over 2 weeks with industry reps, with faculty reps, and then we're going to continue to engage them moving forward, because some of them don't have that support group, right? And so being able to do this, especially what we've learned in a virtual environment, I think it's so much easier to do now. So I guess what you should be thinking about, I'll challenge you to be thinking about how can you start creating a community. There's a listserv called Hispanics in Computing, and people are students, PhD students, faculty are posting constantly, here's an opportunity, or I'm facing this problem, how should I solve it? And it's everyone around the country. So think about ways that you can use virtual to make those connections and support your efforts. And for the staff member, is there a way to create an affinity group at the university where all staff can kind of come together and do things as a group?
I'll answer it this way. Look, the good, bad, and ugly, the onus is on us as people of color to be the ones to educate and inform. And if it doesn't exist, create it. And I think we have to put on our educator hat. Now, this is one of the reasons I think we have to value and give credit to the faculty and staff that are doing that work through their compensation or performance reviews. But who better than you? And if it's a tense or challenging situation where you don't feel comfortable, I would say bring in external folks that can beg the question, what does this mean and what is the opportunity? So you've got folks like Anne Marie, you've got Ann Gates, you've got others out there that are constantly making the case. And the sad reality is sometimes you can't be a sage in your own land. So while you know it, bringing in outside entities that can create space for you to then advocate because you are a peer, you are a part of that solution, that's one approach. But I will say, Sarita, my colleague Sarita Brown and I create Excellence in Education. After all of our work at the federal level, state, institutional level, we couldn't find people who were talking about Latinos from an asset-based perspective about higher ed policy. So we created it. And, grateful that 16 years in, we're still in the space, still trying to do this work, still relevant, I'd like to think. And the onus is on us to create that. That's the pioneras, that's the trend-setting responsibility we have. And I think the onus is on us. It's great to have affinity groups and others, but also working with peers who might not know what opportunities exist to be your allies is another opportunity that you have. So I would just add that to Anne's comments.
I think we have time for one last question. And, one of the things I know from the organizational literature and organizational change is that transforming mindsets is one of the more challenging aspects of creating more equitable environments. And so you've all talked about intentionality as a dimension of that. So can you talk a little bit more about how universities can be more intentional? What might be those kinds of mindsets, and how might researchers understand intentionality or investigate it? I think that's a really challenging question, I think.
Challenging question. Deborah, I'll let you go.
I guess it can be. I think you quickly discern who are really committed to cause and who are not by looking at what their actions are. It's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to see what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I believe you can't just talk the talk, you gotta walk it. And you can ferret that out relatively quickly. At Excelencia, we made a decision when we started the organization. We wanted to work with people ready to work with us. We figured if we have to convince you that this population, this issue is critical, I could spend my entire career trying to convince somebody that is not going to be moved. We said, you know what? There are there's good work happening across the country. Let's mobilize them. Let's find that and share that common cause and community. And then we will find ways to show what's possible and be asset-based. We're modeling the behavior we want others to see. We're shining light on others and their good work. To me, that's how we manifest intentionality. Not afraid to beg the question. I didn't get into this to be universally loved, or I'm in the wrong business for sure. But the ability to advocate on behalf of and show another way of thinking about reframing, that to me is intentionality. The last thing I'd say is that, transforming the mindset, here's an example. 10 years ago, and you guys know this, being an HSI was not sexy. My term sexy, right? Institutions would only acknowledge being an HSI when they were going for federal money. Other than that, it was this deficit-based perspective, like that you have a high concentration of Hispanics was not something you wanted to promote out there. You weren't seen as being academically rigorous or competitive. 10 years later, so many institutions want to become an HSI. It's sexy, it's cool, there's federal money, but it's also, it's searching a population that is potential and of need as you meet your enrollment numbers, and maybe it's meeting your values. All of that motivation for mindset transformation is about modeling behavior, leading, and showing what's possible. I think in there, and then looking at action will tell you intentionality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll give you a perspective coming from the work I did with revolutionizing engineering computer science education. And the fact that there were, I believe, I want to say 12 institutions around the country that were funded. So we are on regular phone calls and we have regular meetings, and it's around changing culture. And when we first started, I felt like everyone had to be on board, and I realized that after talking to many of the leaders around the country, they said, look, I mean, if you have only, a small percent, not everyone's going to be on board. Just go with the ones that are, the ones that get it, the ones that understand. And I'm going to tie that back to some advice I got very early on from when I was in my PhD program. And that was, put your head down, do your work. Don't worry about the naysayers around you. And then pretty soon they're going to come and ask you, wow, that's working. What is it that you're doing? And that, I feel like that really happened in the department. I mean, we didn't push anyone to adopt and change mindset, if you will, but through those discussions, as I talked about around climate and other things, people, I would say are on board. I really think it's turned out to be successful, but it happened because you do what you do it well. You try to be, you always include people, whether they can say no, but you always include them. And then, model what you're preaching, right? I mean, if you want people to respect your opinion, respect theirs. And so anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Well, that wraps up our questions from our audience. I just want to thank both of you for your generosity in sharing your perspectives and just wide range of knowledge about this topic with the Ohio State University Office of Diversity and Inclusion and all of our participants. Yolanda, do you have any last words?
Yes, so my thanks to all 3 of you. One of our attendees referred to you as powerhouses. I totally agree, but thank you so much for having this conversation with us. We all together have much work to do, and Ohio State has great opportunity, I think, to make some significant advancements, and I thank you so much for the inspiration and the wisdom that you shared with us today. So for everyone, I remind you that the webinar will be recorded. My apologies to those who put questions forward. We had a lot of great questions that would have kept us here for another couple days. So this just tells me we need to keep doing this. So thank you all. I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.